The year was 1975, just months after Muhammad Ali had reclaimed his heavyweight title from George Foreman in the legendary Rumble in the Jungle. The air in Louisville, Kentucky carried the distinct scent of spring, fresh grass, blooming dogwoods, and the earthy aroma that follows rain. Ali had returned to his hometown for a brief respite from his grueling schedule, hoping to reconnect with old friends and familiar streets that shaped him long before the world knew his name. The gathering at his childhood friend, Howard Bingham's farm, was meant to be a small celebration among those who knew Ali before fame transformed Cassius Clay into the man who shook the world. 20 or so people milled about the sprawling property, sharing stories and laughter that echoed across the rolling Kentucky hills. Children darted between adults, their energy matching the electricity that always seemed to surround Ali, even in moments of supposed relaxation. If this story has already made you feel something, however small, don't leave without giving back. Comment and tell me where you're watching this video from, and subscribe to the channel. Nobody noticed the beaten-up truck pulling into the driveway until its rusty door creaked open. 3 men Ali hadn't seen since high school emerged, dragging something behind them. Their faces were locked in barely contained laughter, eyes darting between each other with conspiratorial glee. As they approached, the gathering fell silent, all eyes fixed on the rope in their hands and what followed behind them. An old, grey horse with ribs protruding beneath a dull coat, head hanging low, each step seemingly requiring monumental effort. "Hey, champ!" called out the tallest of the 3 men, Jim Holbrook, a former high school wrestling champion who had always considered himself Ali's rival. "And we brought you a gift worthy of the greatest?" The men erupted in laughter, tugging the reluctant animal forward. "Remember how you always said you'd have stables full of the finest horses when you made it big? Well, here's your first thoroughbred." The joke was cruel in its calculation. Everyone present knew Ali's love for horses had been evident since childhood, how he'd spoken of one day owning beautiful Arabians that would outshine any in Kentucky. This skeletal creature, with its cloudy eyes and limping gait, was the antithesis of those dreams, a mockery designed to remind Ali that no matter his worldwide fame, to some in Louisville, he would always be the loud-mouthed kid from Grand Avenue who needed to be put in his place. Silence blanketed the gathering. Children stopped their games. Adults froze mid-conversation, all waiting for Ali's reaction. Would the famous temper flare? Would the razor-sharp wit that cut down opponents in and out of the ring emerge to slice Jim and his friends to ribbons? Even Howard stepped forward, ready to intervene before his party devolved into something ugly. But something unexpected happened in that tense moment. Ali's expression, initially tightening at the sight of the men, softened completely when his eyes fell upon the horse. Without a word, he broke away from the crowd and approached the animal with the same measured steps he used to close distance in the ring. The horse, sensing his approach, lifted its weary head, nostrils flaring slightly. "Easy now," Ali whispered, extending his hand palm up, the same hand that had felled giants now offering itself with infinite gentleness. "Ah, easy. Beautiful." The gathering watched in stunned silence as Muhammad Ali, the most famous athlete in the world, stood perfectly still, speaking in hushed tones to an old, unwanted horse as though it were the most precious creature on earth. When the horse finally nudged Ali's palm with its velvety muzzle, something shifted in the atmosphere. The joke had failed to land as intended. Instead of humiliation, those present witnessed something far more powerful, compassion in its purest form. Ali untied the rope from around the horse's neck and handed it back to Jim, whose smirk had faded into confusion. "Thank you," Ali said simply, his voice carrying none of its usual bombast. "You couldn't have brought me anything better." The following morning found Muhammad Ali at Howard's farm before dawn, having returned specifically to see the horse that his so-called friends had abandoned after their joke fell flat. Howard, initially skeptical about Ali's interest in the neglected animal, was shocked to find the heavyweight champion of the world mucking out a stall, sleeves rolled up, sweat already staining his shirt despite the early hour. What are you doing, Muhammad?" Howard asked, watching his friend work with the same intensity he brought to his training. "That horse is half dead. Veterinarian said he's probably 25 years old at least, used up by some mining operation and then passed around until nobody wanted him anymore." Ali paused, leaning on the pitchfork. "You ever been written off, Howard? Ever had people look at you and see nothing but what you can't do anymore?" He returned to his work, speaking between labored breaths. "This horse has eyes like my grandfather, seen too much, carried too many, but still standing. I'm calling him Wisdom." Over the next several days, while Ali was supposed to be resting before heading to training camp for his upcoming fight with Ron Lyle, he instead devoted hours to the rehabilitation of Wisdom. Local newspapers caught wind of the story, how the great Muhammad Ali was nursing an abandoned workhorse back to health, but most dismissed it as another publicity stunt from boxing's most controversial figure. What they didn't see were the quiet mornings when Ali would sit on an overturned bucket in Wisdom's stall, reading aloud from books or newspapers, his melodious voice filling the barn. "The mind needs exercise just like the body," he explained to Howard when caught in this ritual. "And who says horses don't understand? Maybe they understand better than most men." Ali brought in veterinarians, nutritionists, and horse trainers, all of whom initially advised putting the animal down to end its suffering. All were met with the same response. "You wouldn't say that if this was Secretariat fallen on hard times. Every living thing deserves someone in its corner when the fight gets tough." 2 weeks into Ali's unexpected equine project, something remarkable began to happen. Wisdom's coat, previously dull and patchy, began to show hints of luster. His walking became steadier, his eyes clearer. The horse that had been delivered as a cruel joke began following Ali around the paddock, nickering softly whenever the boxer came into view. Perhaps most surprising was the effect Wisdom had on Ali himself. His entourage noticed a change in his demeanor, a quieter thoughtfulness replacing his typical theatrical bravado. When Angelo Dundee, his longtime trainer, called to demand Ali return to training camp immediately, he was met with uncharacteristic resistance. "I'm training right here, Angie," Ali insisted over the crackling phone line. "Learning things about patience and recovery that'll help me against Lyle. You can't rush healing, not for horses, not for fighters." One afternoon, a local reporter managed to slip past security at the farm, hoping to capture photos of the bizarre story. The world's greatest boxer playing nursemaid to an ancient horse. What he witnessed instead was Ali sitting cross-legged in the pasture, Wisdom's large head resting in his lap as the boxer spoke softly to the animal. The reporter, expecting to find comedy, instead found himself lowering his camera, unwilling to intrude on what was clearly a private moment of connection. When the story finally ran, the headline read simply, "The greatest shows greatest kindness to society's forgotten." The accompanying photo wasn't of Ali and Wisdom, but of the fresh Timothy hay and specialized feed stacked neatly outside the barn, evidence of care rather than spectacle. As April turned to May, Ali could no longer postpone his departure for training camp. The night before he was scheduled to leave, Howard found his friend asleep in Wisdom's stall, the great boxer curled on a bed of straw, while the horse stood protectively nearby. Howard, not wanting to disturb either of them, simply closed the barn door and walked away, understanding that whatever was happening between man and horse transcended explanation. The Muhammad Ali who arrived at training camp in Deer Lake, Pennsylvania in mid-May was not the same man his team had worked with before. Something fundamental had shifted during his time with Wisdom. Always a fighter who trained hard, Ali now approached his preparation with a different kind of intensity, quieter, more focused, less dependent on the audience that usually fueled his performances. "Drew, what happened to you in Kentucky?" Angelo Dundee asked after watching Ali complete a grueling workout without a single boast or poem. "You're fighting different, training different, even breathing different." Ali, unwrapping his hands after 7 punishing rounds on the heavy bag, considered the question seriously. "That horse taught me something, Angie. When I first got him, I wanted results fast, wanted him healthy yesterday. But you can't rush healing. Had to learn to see the tiny improvements, celebrate every small victory. Now I'm seeing my own fighting the same way, not just the knockout, but every perfect jab, every time I slip a punch just right." News from Howard came regularly. Updates on Wisdom's continuing recovery, accompanied by Polaroid photographs showing the remarkable transformation of the animal. What had once been a walking skeleton was now recognizable as a proud American quarter horse, his brown coat regaining its natural sheen, muscles rebuilding across his once emaciated frame. What surprised Ali's inner circle most was how he incorporated wisdom into his training philosophy. When sparring partners couldn't understand his new, more patient fighting style, Ali would pull out the photos of Wisdom. "See this horse. 2 months ago, he couldn't walk straight. Now look at him. That's what happens when you stop forcing and start flowing. That's what I'm bringing to Lyle, not just power, but patience." The weeks passed, with Ali splitting his focus between preparation for his May 24th bout with Ron Lyle and his continued investment in Wisdom's rehabilitation. He arranged for specialized care, paid for experimental treatments for the horse's arthritis, and even flew in an equine massage therapist from California, an unheard-of extravagance in 1975. When questioned about the expense and attention devoted to a single elderly horse, Ali's response revealed how deeply the animal had affected him. "People keep asking why I care so much about this old horse. They don't understand. In that horse, I see every person who's been discarded because they're not useful anymore. Every fighter who lost their last bout and got forgotten. Every person who's been told they're too old or too broken to matter. When I help Wisdom, I'm fighting for all of them." As the Lyle fight approached, the press focused on Ali's unusual preparation and questioned whether his distraction with the horse would impact his performance. Sports columnists wrote dismissively about the heavyweight champion playing farmer instead of focusing on his craft. Vegas oddsmakers cited Ali's apparent lack of focus as reason to favor the younger, hungrier Lyle. What none of them saw was how Ali had integrated the lessons from his experience with Wisdom into his fighting strategy. In sparring, he displayed a new patience, willing to absorb pressure, conserve energy, and wait for the perfect moment rather than forcing opportunities. His footwork, always masterful, now incorporated a new economy of movement that his trainers struggled to understand but couldn't argue with the results. The night before leaving for Las Vegas, Ali received a call from Howard. "You won't believe this, Muhammad," his friend said, voice crackling with excitement over the long-distance line. "Wisdom jumped the paddock fence today. Not just stepped over it, jumped it clean, like a horse half his age. Vet says it's a miracle." Ali was uncharacteristically quiet on the other end. Finally, he spoke, his voice soft with emotion. "No miracle, Howard. Just someone believing in him when nobody else would." After a pause, he added, "That's all any of us really needs." The Las Vegas Convention Center hummed with anticipation on May 24th, 1975. 16,000 spectators had gathered to watch Muhammad Ali defend his heavyweight title against Ron Lyle, but the man who stepped into the ring that night seemed different from the Ali they had come to expect. Gone was the pre-fight bombast, the theatrical predictions, the poetry that had become his trademark. Instead, Ali moved with quiet purpose, his eyes holding a serenity that confounded commentators and spectators alike. What followed was one of the most tactically brilliant performances of Ali's career. For 11 rounds, he displayed a fighting style that seemed to incorporate something ancient and new simultaneously. The rope-a-dope strategy he had used against Foreman, but refined with a patience that allowed him to absorb Lyle's tremendous power while expending minimal energy. When the referee stopped the fight in the 11th round, declaring Ali the winner by technical knockout, even boxing purists who had criticized his horse distraction had to acknowledge they had witnessed something extraordinary. In the post-fight interview, Howard Cosell pushed past questions about technique to ask about the change in Ali's demeanor. "Muhammad, we've known each other a long time," Cosell said, "and I've never seen you fight with such controlled patience. What's changed?" Ali, still catching his breath, looked directly into the camera. "I had a teacher these past few months, Howard, not a boxing coach, an old horse named Wisdom that nobody wanted. He showed me that comebacks happen in their own time, that healing follows its own schedule. I brought that into the ring tonight. The story of Muhammad Ali and Wisdom might have ended there, a curious footnote in the boxer's legendary career, had it not been for what happened next." Upon returning to Louisville after the fight, Ali made a decision that surprised even those closest to him. Instead of selling his struggling childhood farm, he transformed it into the Muhammad Ali Equine Rehabilitation Center, with Wisdom as its first resident. "We're going to take in the horses nobody else wants," Ali announced at the modest opening ceremony, attended mainly by local press and curious neighbors. "The too old, the too injured, the ones that have been written off. Because those are the ones with the most heart, the ones with something left to prove." What began as a seemingly impulsive project born from a cruel joke soon developed into something no one could have predicted. The Rehabilitation Center, initially dismissed as another of Ali's eccentric ventures, began attracting attention from veterinary schools. Wisdom, whose remarkable recovery defied medical explanation, became a case study in equine rehabilitation. Techniques developed during his treatment were documented, refined, and eventually published in veterinary journals. By 1977, the center had expanded to accommodate 30 horses, employing specialized staff and pioneering treatments that combined traditional veterinary medicine with nutrition and physical therapy approaches adapted from human sports medicine. Ali, between fights and training, remained deeply involved, often spending hours with the animals, particularly Wisdom, who had become something of a mascot for the facility. Perhaps the most unexpected development came in the winter of 1978, when Ali opened the center's doors to local children with disabilities. "These kids and these horses understand each other," Ali explained to skeptical parents. "They both know what it's like when people see your limitations before they see you." The sight of Muhammad Ali, still heavyweight champion of the world, leading a young girl with cerebral palsy around the paddock on a gently plodding Wisdom, became one of the defining images of this chapter in his life. The therapeutic riding program, revolutionary for its time, would eventually grow into one of the first formal equine therapy centers in America. Jim Holbrook and his friends, whose cruel joke had inadvertently sparked this unexpected journey, eventually came to the center themselves, not to mock, but to apologize. Ali, never one to hold grudges, put them to work mucking stalls and grooming horses. "Best punishment is purpose," he told Howard with a wink. "These horses don't care who you used to be or what mistakes you made. They just know if you're helping them now." As for Wisdom, the horse lived an improbable 8 more years, reaching an estimated age of 33, extraordinary for a horse that had been worked nearly to death. Until the end, he maintained a special bond with Ali, seemingly recognizing the boxer's footsteps before he even entered the barn. When wisdom finally passed in 1983, Ali buried him beneath a simple marker that read, "Here lies wisdom, who taught the greatest his greatest lesson." In later years, long after his boxing career ended, Ali would often cite his experience with wisdom as one of the most transformative periods of his life. "That horse came to me broken, just when I needed to learn about healing," he reflected in a rare, quiet interview. "People think I saved him, but truth is, we saved each other. If you made it this far and felt every word, don't leave without subscribing. I tell these stories with my heart in my hand, to reach people like you, who feel, who get emotional, who truly live. If this really touched you, give back, comment, subscribe. Come be part of this family with me until the next video."